Chair.
I call the Honourable Member Jacinda Ardern.
I'm surprised by that. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm pleased to take a call on this bill, Mr. Chair. We are debating parts, I believe, 1 through to 6, but I think in debating these sections of the bill, it's really important that we keep the context of the number of houses that we're actually talking about presently. I mean, currently in terms of our housing stock, social housing, state housing makes up 5% of available stock out there in New Zealand. We are not talking about a large number of housing. It is very clear that the need and the demand is much higher. But this bill certainly gives the sense that we are shuffling around the deck chairs of the Titanic and there aren't enough chairs to go around for everyone. And so instead of saying someone get more chairs, we're simply setting a whole lot of extra additional strict criteria to determine who gets to sit down. I'm going to end that analogy there, Mr. Chair, and go on to part 1 of the bill, which sets out in quite a bit of detail the ability of Housing New Zealand to review tenancy at any point, and it also puts in a large range of circumstances under which Housing New Zealand can simply review at any point someone's eligibility to remain in the home. I start with clause 56, which sets out the tenant's duty to advise changes of circumstances. Now, it states that every person to whom any Housing New Zealand housing is let at any income-related rent must properly advise Housing New Zealand of any change in the person's circumstances likely to result in the payment of a higher income-related rent. Now, I really just want to question whether or not, Mr. Chair, via the Minister, if you're anticipating whether or not something's likely to impact on your income, then that's really a precarious test to apply. Now, I think here of what's happened for the welfare state in particular. That's probably the most comparable area, where, for instance, those who are in receipt of state benefits are required to phone in to work and income on a weekly basis their hours worked as they anticipate them to be. And sometimes, Mr. Chair, that's out of alignment with what an employer assesses via their payslip and via what they respond to IRD as having been their hours worked. Now, a lot of people, Mr. Chair, who are living in state houses will be in precarious work. They will be working hours that fluctuate. They might be working shifts or seasonal work. So anticipating whether or not they're likely to be dropping in and out of Housing New Zealand's requirement around their income test is quite a difficult test. Now, I'd also like to hear from the Minister, if there is data matching going on with Housing New Zealand, as is the case now with work and income, suddenly work and income, once it starts trying to build these two pieces of information together, suddenly says, aha, masses of people trying to defraud the system. Not the case. In fact, what we have is simply a range of overpayment and underpayment based on people reporting the hours they believe to have worked before they've actually received their payslip. Now, are we going to have a similar situation with people falling inside and outside what is likely to be eligibility? Given this frequent testing and now these tests that tell a tenant they must anticipate whether or not they are, then that's potentially we may see the same issues as we have with work and income. I would like to specifically know from the Minister whether there is a data matching exercise going on with IRD, with Housing New Zealand, as there is with work and income. I want to come then to part 1 down to clause 12. It sets out there that the circumstances under which Housing New Zealand may review housing eligibility. Now, the thing that the Minister doesn't seem to acknowledge here, he talks generally about the idea that the waiting lists are so high that it's unfair to have anyone, it seems to be anyone paying market rents for state housing seem to be a problem from the Minister's perspective. What he fails to acknowledge is that some people who are paying market rents in state houses are simply people who cannot find housing anywhere else. Come to Central Auckland and I will introduce you to a range of sole parents who cannot rent a house in the private rental market. Demand is extraordinary in some parts of Auckland. They have become desperate enough that they will go to Housing New Zealand even though they don't want to be in front of Housing New Zealand. They know that there is high need and they don't see themselves as being amongst the category of individuals who would need to call on Housing New Zealand. But what do you do, Minister, if after 6 months and you have a child under the age of 5 and you cannot find a home? What do you do? In desperation, many go to Housing New Zealand. So, Mr. Chair,
I call the Honourable Minister Nick Smith.
Mr. Chairman, the